My name is Jessica James. I'm 24, and last week I graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in finance alone. In a family obsessed with image and attention, I was always the quiet one, the reliable daughter who worked double shifts while my sister Sierra collected brand deals and applause. They called me the practical one, but what they really meant was the invisible one. I've spent my whole life trying to earn a place at their table, believing that if I achieved enough, they'd finally look my way. But on the day I walked across that stage, the day that should have belonged to me, my family boarded a flight without me. And when my phone rang 35 times in a row, I thought maybe something terrible had happened. I was right, just not in the way I expected. What would you do if your biggest moment came and the people you loved most just didn't show up? If this story resonates, tell us how you handled that heartbreak. Your story might heal someone still waiting to be noticed. The sun poured through my window that morning like it knew what this day was supposed to mean. I'd barely slept. My gown hung on the closet door like armor, my cap balanced next to it, tassel still untouched. I spent too long in front of the mirror brushing my hair, back from my face, applying makeup with a trembling hand. Not for vanity, for hope. For once, I wanted to feel like someone worth looking at. A printed invitation sat on my desk. Cream card, stock, navy trim, my handwriting neat but nervous. Reserved seating for family. Of Ava Morgan as guests. I'd sent it to my parents 3 weeks ago, texted a reminder, called twice. "We'll be there," Mom had said, distracted as if confirming a grocery list. The auditorium buzzed with color and joy. Blue and gold banners, flowers, the smell of coffee and perfume, and summer nerves. Fathers in suits wiping sweat from their brows, mothers clutching bouquets. Students laughing too loud like they were trying to mask the fact that everything was ending. I walked in alone, a volunteer and a polo guided me to my seat near the front. "Your guests should be able to see you perfectly from here," she smiled. I nodded. Didn't correct her. My phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out expecting a weir. Parking now or save us seats, something, anything. But instead, I saw a new message in the family group chat. "Mom, sweetheart, we can't make it today. Something urgent came up. We'll make it up to you later." I froze. My chest went cold. Seconds later, a story popped up on Sierra's Instagram. There they were, all 3 of them. Mom, Dad, and Sierra, smiling at the airport, luggage in hand. Sierra flashing a peace sign next to the caption, "Palm Springs spa trip, had family time." They were beaming. I was missing. I stared at the photo so long, the screen dimmed. My name was called. Ava Morgan, summa cum laude. I stood on autopilot. My hands were shaking. I glanced toward the row I'd asked the organizers to reserve front and center right by the aisle. 5 empty seats all around me. Families cheered, posters waved, flowers burst in color. I smiled. For the camera, a practiced empty smile, and stepped up the stairs. That's when the first vibration hit. Then another. Then a third. By the time I reached the dean, my gown pocket buzzed non-stop. 35. Missed calls, all from Dad. No messages, no congrats, just come home immediately. I sat back down, still gripping my diploma. The crowd erupted with cheers for someone else's name, but all I could hear was the dull roar of static behind my eyes. My friends were clapping, a few waved from the back. Claire, my roommate, and the only person who'd been there for me the past 4 years, blew a kiss from across the aisle. I looked down at my phone again. 35 calls, 3 words. Come home immediately, as if nothing I was doing mattered, as if my ceremony, my moment was just a commercial break in their lives. I blinked back tears, not because I was surprised, but because I wasn't. They didn't show up. They never had. And now, after skipping the biggest day of my life, they wanted me to come running like I owed them something. I stared at the 5 empty chairs one last time. No flowers, no photos, no applause, nothing. But silence. And then I stood and I walked away. I had waited 4 years for them to clap for me. All I got was an order. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I sat on a bench just off campus, still in my gown, watching the sun dip below the trees, while students and families passed by with balloons and armfuls of flowers. Laughter bounced in the air. Bursts of congratulations echoed across the quad, and every now and then someone would glance at me like I was lost. Maybe I was. I texted Claire I'm okay. Just needed a minute. But I wasn't okay. Not even close. My fingers gripped the edge of the diploma folder like it might suddenly prove something, as if holding that piece of paper tight enough would make the absence hurt less, as if it could rewrite every other moment where I'd been left behind. Because this wasn't the first time. It started early, always. Small at first moments, easy to brush off, forgettable to anyone who wasn't me, like when I was 10 and won first place at the state science fair. I'd built a working water filtration system from recycled plastic and gravel. I remember standing on the auditorium stage in Tacoma, the glass trophy warm in my sweaty hands, scanning the crowd. For my parents. They weren't there. Later that night, I rode the bus home alone, cradling the trophy. I scrolled through my phone and saw a photo Sierra had posted from a local beauty pageant. A tiara on her head. Mom and Dad on either side of her, grinning wide like she'd just cured cancer. No one asked me how the fair went. When I was 13, I broke my arm at summer camp. A rock climbing activity gone wrong. The pain was sharp, immediate. I remember screaming, which wasn't like me. I was always the quiet one, the composed one. The counselor called my mom. When she arrived, she barely looked at the swollen arm before saying, "You're stronger than this. Don't exaggerate." She spent more time chatting with another parent than checking if I was okay. But when Sierra scraped her knee, the next week in the park, full ER visit, chocolate ice cream. My poor baby mom whispered, holding her like she was made of glass. That was when I stopped expecting comfort. By 16, I learned to expect even less. My birthday came and went with a discount notebook from a dollar store. Dad handed it to me with a half smile. "You like writing, right?" That was it. A month later, Sierra got a custom cake, a party bus, and a new iPhone. The same one I couldn't afford. Even on sale. She always got more. More attention, more hugs, more praise. It wasn't just birthdays or scraped knees. It was everything. Christmas gifts, dinner conversations, vacations. They posted about her every week. Her selfies, her brand collabs, her skincare routine. My scholarship to UB got A. Thumbs up and a well. At least we don't have to pay. It became a pattern. No, not a pattern, a system. One where I was the stable one, the background character, the one who handled things. Sierra was the star, and I believed that. Was fine. For years I told myself it was okay to be quiet, that it was better to be the calm one, the responsible one. I wore that identity like armor. If I wasn't going to be adored, at least I could be useful. So, I stopped. Complaining. I worked 3 jobs, a cafe in the mornings, the campus library in the evenings, and unpaid internships. Wherever I could get them. I managed to pay rent, tuition, groceries. I became the girl who handled her business. And when it got too much, when I worked until 2 a.m. and then studied until 4, I'd picture graduation day. I saw them, clapping in the crowd, finally proud. It was the illusion I fed myself so I wouldn't shatter. But illusions don't survive impact. That night after the ceremony, I went back to my apartment in the U District. I slipped off the gown and laid it gently on my bed. It still smelled like fresh fabric and sweat and shame. My phone buzzed again. Claire, come over. I have cake. You don't have to talk. Just exist. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered. I wanted to. Say yes to feel seen. But instead I typed thanks. I think I just need to be. Alone tonight, she didn't push. That's why she was the only one I trusted. I collapsed on the couch. The apartment was too quiet. My roommate was gone for the weekend. Graduation trips, family, reunions. Things normal people did. I looked around. No streamers. No bouquet. No card. No we're proud of you. Just my name. On a degree that I earned while being invisible. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually I curled up with a blanket and tried to fall asleep, but every time I closed my eyes I saw those 5 empty seats front and center. Reserved, waiting, just like I'd been. In the morning I woke to dozens of stories on my feed. Classmates hugging their parents, holding their degrees, popping champagne in the quad. And then I saw Sierra's newest post, a photo from the resort spa in Palm Springs, sunglasses on, bathrobe tied just so. Caption: self-care is everything. Deserve it. Family first. The words made me nauseous. Family first whose? Family certainly not mine. I was still staring at the post when my phone rang. Dad. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again and again. 3rd time I answered. Before I could say anything, he launched in. Ava, finally listen. We need you to come by today. It's important. No. Hello. No. How is your ceremony? Not even a sorry we missed it. Just, we need you for what I didn't ask. I just listened. But something inside me started to tighten. They didn't care how hard I worked, how much I gave up. They never had. All they knew was that I'd show up when they called. But this time something was different. This time I needed to know, was it finally about me? Or was I just useful again? The drive to Bellevue was quiet. Too quiet. My old Toyota hummed along I-405 windows, rolled up silence louder than any music could have been. I didn't know what I was expecting, really. Maybe a weak apology. Maybe Mom would say, "I'm sorry we missed it. Things just got hectic." Maybe Dad would pat my shoulder like he used to before he stopped trying. But deep down I already knew better. When I pulled into the driveway, Sierra's pink duffel bags were piled near the front door. Expensive monogram just enough. Scuff to seem lived in. I stepped over them on my way in. The house still smelled like lavender and lemon cleaner. Mom's signature. Everything was in place, too perfect. They weren't mourning missing my graduation. They were prepping for a cover-up. Ava Dad called from the kitchen like I was 10 and late for dinner. "There you are. Come sit." I walked in and found him at the table with his laptop open, spreadsheets pulled up. Mom poured coffee into 3 mugs, slid one toward me, then sat without making eye contact. Sierra was already scrolling through her phone, manicured, nails tapping like clockwork. She didn't look up. No one said a word about my gown or the stage or the diploma that I had to carry home by myself. So, Dad began clearing his throat like this was a business meeting. "We've got a bit of a situation." I didn't sit. I crossed my arms. "You dragged me here the day after graduation because of a situation," Sierra groaned. "God, Ava, can you not be dramatic for once?" My jaw clenched. "Try me." Mom finally looked up. "Your sister had a little trouble with her card this weekend. Overspending. We think the bank overreacted, but they've frozen her account." And Dad turned the laptop toward me. A red warning banner flashed across Sierra's credit account dashboard. "The balance is at $7,400. The bank needs immediate payment to lift the hold. And you called me because Dad sighed the way he does when he thinks I'm being difficult. You're good with money. You're the responsible one. And you've been saving, haven't you?" There it was. The whole point. Not a congratulatory hug, not even a photo, just a request. "Let me get this straight," I said, voice low. "You skipped my graduation, lied about. Something urgent flew to Palm Springs. And now the first thing you say to me is that you need me to cover Sierra's mess." Sierra finally looked up, rolling her eyes. "It wasn't a mess. The hotel charged me twice. And the spa wasn't even that good." I turned to Mom. "You said you'd make it up to me." "Was this your idea of that, Ava?" She said, tone clipped. "Your sister is under a lot of pressure. She has sponsors, followers. She's not a child," I snapped. "She's 20. She travels, she shops, she gets more attention in a week than I've gotten in a lifetime. And now I'm supposed to save her." "Ava," Dad warned, "don't turn this into a fight. We need you to help, that's all." I laughed short, bitter. "No, that's not all. You didn't even ask how my graduation went. You didn't even pretend to care." Sierra scoffed. "You want us to throw a parade because you got a piece of paper that hit harder than it should have." I took a breath. I worked 4 jobs. I paid my way through college. I've never asked for anything from this family. I stepped back. "But you've always asked from me." Silence. The kind that told me they weren't sorry. They were just inconvenienced. Dad cleared his throat again. "Well, if you're not going to help, I'm not." He blinked. Excuse me, I'm not transferring a dime. If Sierra's grown enough to jet off for spa weekends, she's grown enough to handle a credit freeze. Mom's expression hardened. Ava, don't be selfish. There it was, the word they always used when I refused to be their safety net. I turned toward the door. You don't get to call me selfish. Not after you left me sitting in an auditorium by myself while everyone else was being celebrated. I walked out before they could say anything else. Back in my car, I just sat behind the wheel for a few minutes, the engine off. My hands were shaking. The rage was slow burning. Not fire, but ice. I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I called Claire. You okay? She answered on the first ring. Do you still have that cake? She exhaled into the phone. I'll cut you a giant slice. You coming over? Yeah, I said. I'm done pretending like I'm not angry. Claire's apartment was warm and cluttered, full of plants and mismatched mugs. We sat on her worn couch, forks in hand, a tray of leftover chocolate cake between us. I can't believe they actually said that to you, she muttered after I told her everything. I shrugged. Honestly, I can. I just didn't want to. She leaned back. You know, Ava, sometimes I wonder what would happen if you stopped trying to earn their love. I paused. Then what am I supposed to do? Maybe, she said, you stop chasing their approval and start giving yourself the respect they never did. I didn't say anything, but her words landed hard. Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The shadows played across the paint like waves. Respect. I'd been fighting for a version of love that only existed when I was useful. Maybe I didn't need their validation. Maybe I never had. But if that was true, why did it still hurt so much? My phone buzzed at 2:37 a.m. Incoming call, Mom. I watched the screen flash until it dimmed. Then it buzzed again. Incoming call, Dad. I let it ring. This time, I wasn't going to answer. But in the morning, I'd find out they hadn't stopped with just the phone calls. This time they'd gone further. They wanted my money, and they didn't even bother asking if they wouldn't remember my graduation. Maybe they'd remember my silence. The call from the bank came just after lunch the next day. I was cleaning out my inbox, half listening to a podcast about women in finance, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Hi, may I speak with Ava Morgan? The woman on the line asked, polite but urgent. This is she. This is Allison. From First Pacific Credit Union's fraud department. We're calling to confirm a recent transfer request from your checking account totaling $5, $240. The transaction was initiated this morning via online banking. Do you authorize this payment? I froze. I didn't make any transfers. Today, I said, my voice catching. All right, that's what we suspected. The IP address logged for the transaction is located in Bellevue, Washington. Does that location sound familiar? It did. Too familiar. My parents' house. I swallowed. My throat burned. Cancel it. Immediately. We already flagged it as suspicious. No funds were moved, but we recommend updating your login credentials as soon as possible, and we'll be sending you a follow-up form to confirm fraud on the account. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at my phone. My heart thudded dully against my ribs. I wasn't angry, not yet, not even hurt, just numb. They hadn't just ignored my graduation. They hadn't just demanded I pay off Sierra's debt. They had tried to take the money anyway. My money, the savings I'd built from sleepless nights, tip jars, spreadsheet marathons, the little bit I had scraped together to start a future. They had reached in like it was theirs, and worse, I'd given them the key. Back in high school, my dad insisted I give him access to my online banking so we can keep an eye on your spending. He'd said, "Make sure you're building smart habits." I had been 16. I never changed the password. Some small part of me, despite everything, had still believed they'd respect that line. That part of me died right then. I spent the next 2 hours resetting everything. New passwords for every bank account, email, Venmo, PayPal. I enabled 2-factor authentication on everything. I even updated the passcode on my phone. It felt like changing the locks after a break-in. Not because you weren't careful, but because you assumed the people with a key would never use it against you. That night I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, every muscle tensed. I kept expecting my phone to ring again. Another demand, another lie. Instead, silence. It was worse somehow. The next morning I called my mom. She picked up after 2 rings. Voice sugary sweet. "Ava, I was just about to call you. I didn't even say hello. Did you try to transfer money from my account?" A pause. Just long enough to confirm guilt. Then she exhaled like I was the one being difficult. "Ava, don't be so dramatic. It wasn't some malicious thing. Sierra needed help. You weren't answering. You figured you'd just take it. You're her sister," she said sharply. "You have savings. We're a family. Helping each other out isn't theft." I laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "It is when you use someone's login without asking," she sighed again. "God, Ava, you're always so rigid. We've always said you're too uptight about money." "No, I said you've always assumed I'd clean up everyone else's mess." She didn't respond. "I've covered her late fees, her missed payments. I even let you take the refund from my scholarship that one year because you said the roof needed fixing. And now you steal from me, Ava." "Don't," I snapped. "Don't call it family. You don't get to weaponize that word when you only use it to take." Another long pause. Then, a muffled voice in the background. Dad's, I think, asking who she was talking to. I hung up. I didn't wait to hear what came next. I couldn't. I threw my phone across the room. Not hard enough to break, just hard enough to make a sound. Something real. Then I sat on the edge of the couch and cried. Not the kind of crying I used to do quietly, in my bedroom, afraid someone might hear. This time, I cried with all the sound, all the air, all the pressure of years of being second place in a family where I was only visible when someone else needed a favor, and when the sobs finally slowed, I whispered the one truth I had never dared speak out loud. I don't trust them. I never really did. Claire showed up later with 2 coffees and a bag of bagels. I hadn't told her what happened yet, but the second she saw my face, she sat next to me, wordless. We sat in that silence for a while. Not the empty kind, the kind that makes room for honesty. "They tried to take money from me," I finally said without asking. She blinked slow. Jesus. Ava. I nodded. I used to think they just forgot about me. But now I think they saw me as a backup plan all along. Claire didn't argue. She just handed me a napkin. So what now? I don't know. I stared at the carpet, but I can't go back. Not this time, she nudged my shoulder gently. Then don't. I looked at her. Really looked at the way she saw me without flinching. At the way she didn't expect anything but truth. Maybe this was what real family looked like. Not blood, not obligation, just showing up. Honestly, fully. I think I need to move, I said suddenly. Claire raised an eyebrow. Move where? Out of the U district. I need distance, a reset, something that doesn't have their fingerprints all over it. She nodded, like she'd already been waiting for me to get there. I know a place, she said. Downtown, small, but clean. It's yours, if you want it, I breathed out. Just once deep and full and clear, I do. That. Weekend. Claire helped me pack. I boxed up every part of that apartment. Textbooks, mugs, job interviews. The diploma still in its cardboard folder. I didn't take the old photos, not the ones of Sierra and me at Christmas, not the family photo from my high school graduation where I stood in the back like a prop. I left them in a drawer. When I moved into the new place, I bought a new password notebook, locked it in a drawer, set a new code on the door. For the first time, my space belonged to me. No eyes watching, no hands reaching in, just me. And for the first time in a very long time, that was enough. But I should have known they wouldn't stop at silence. Because when people are used to taking from you, they don't like being told no. And next time they wouldn't ask for help. They'd ask for something bigger. They'd ask for an investment. If they could steal my money, what else were they willing to? Take downtown? Seattle was a different rhythm entirely. Faster, louder, but somehow less invasive. In the U district, I couldn't walk down the street without bumping into reminders of the person I used to be. Cafes I studied in until midnight. The library steps where I cried after a midterm. The apartment building where Sierra once visited and complained about my IKEA furniture. Here I was, a stranger, and for the first time I liked it. My new apartment was tiny, a converted studio above a coffee shop, but it was mine. The floors creaked. The heater made weird noises at night, the windows fogged up with the rain. Still, it felt more like home than anywhere I'd ever lived. I took the diploma out of its cardboard folder and leaned it against the wall on top of the dresser. I didn't frame it, not yet. But it sat there like a quiet witness, a reminder that I made it. Even if no one had clapped. My morning started with instant coffee and the sound of streetcars. Below, I'd scroll job boards with one hand and draft resumes with the other. After a week of searching, I landed a junior financial analyst role at a fintech startup. Small team, big goals, lots of caffeine. The office was housed in a converted industrial building near Pioneer Square. Exposed brick, long, communal tables and a cold brew keg on tap. Every startup cliché wrapped in one. But it was clean. It was structured. It was something I could grow into. My boss Karen was the kind of woman who wore sneakers with blazers and never smiled unless she meant it. She noticed things, mistakes, yes, but also potential. You think in systems, she said during my first week. That's rare. Don't apologize for it. No one had ever said something like that to me before. Not without turning it into an insult. I worked late most nights, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I felt useful, not as someone's backup plan or emotional punching bag, but as someone who knew what she was doing. At lunch, I sat alone for the first few weeks. I didn't mind. It gave me time to breathe, to process, to think. Claire texted often, usually with links to therapy memes or photos of her cat, Milo, sleeping in ridiculous poses. One afternoon, she messaged, "You free Friday movie night?" I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying, "Rain check. Work's been crazy." Which wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. The truth was, I didn't know how to be close to people without expecting them to hurt me, even Claire. So, I stayed busy. I organized reports, built spreadsheets, found comfort in columns and clean math. Numbers didn't manipulate. They didn't guilt trip. They didn't ask you to forgive and forget and then steal from your account the next week. Karen noticed my hours. One night, as I was shutting down around 8 p.m., she leaned against the doorframe to my desk pod. "You trying to win employee of the month in your first quarter?" she asked. I laughed weakly. "Just trying not to mess up." She tilted her head. "You don't seem like someone who messes up. I've just always had to clean up after other people." She nodded slowly, like she understood more than she let on. "You know, you don't have to prove anything here. You're already here. That's enough." I blinked. No one had ever told me I was enough. Not without conditions. Not without strings. I went home that night and cried for reasons I couldn't name. On Saturday, Claire showed up at my door with donuts and a Netflix login. "No more rain checks," she said, letting herself in. "Your silence is starting to sound like your old coping habit." She wasn't wrong. I brewed coffee. We sat, cross-legged on the floor, sugar dusting our fingers, the city buzzing below. She paused halfway through a bite and looked at me. "You know I'm not them, right?" I nodded. "I do." "Then why are you acting like I'm going to disappear the second you get comfortable?" I didn't answer right away. I didn't know how to say that. Trust felt like a switchblade, something sharp I couldn't hold for too long without cutting myself. "You've seen me," I finally said, "and you stayed. That scares me more than being alone." Claire softened. "I'm staying because you're worth staying for. That's not a trick." I looked down at my coffee steam curling upward like smoke. "Okay," I whispered. "I'm trying." "That's enough," she said. We watched bad rom-coms and talked about nothing. It felt like healing. Quiet, slow, messy healing. 2 weeks later, I received a text from my mom. "Dinner this Sunday. Everyone misses you. Come home." No emojis, no explanations, just 7 words that landed like a stone in my gut. I stared at it for a full minute before showing Claire. "Sounds suspiciously normal," she muttered. "That's what worries me." "You going?" I hesitated. "I think I have to." "Not for them. For me. I need to see what this really is. And Claire didn't argue. She just said, "Text me if you need an emergency exit." I smiled. Deal. That Sunday, I stood outside my parents' front door for the first time in over a month. My hand hovered over the door knob. Something felt off. The lights were too bright, the silence too heavy. When I stepped inside, the living room looked staged. The table was set with linen napkins, wine glasses, candles, a spread of dishes Mom hadn't cooked in years. Sierra sat at the head of the table in a silk blazer and glossy makeup, smiling like a debutante on a talk show. Dad stood near the fireplace, posture stiff like a CEO presenting a pitch deck. Mom greeted me with a strange smile and a kiss on the cheek that didn't land. I knew this wasn't about family. It was a setup, and when Sierra pulled out a blush pink folder and slid it across the table toward me, I didn't even pretend to be surprised. "Sit, Ava," she said sweetly. "We want to offer you an incredible opportunity." They never just wanted to see me. They wanted something. I didn't sit. Not right away. Instead, I stared at the blush pink folder resting like a snake in the middle of the table, glossy and smooth and dangerous. Sierra's smile didn't waver, but I could see the twitch at the corner of her mouth. That little tell when she was trying too hard to act like she was in control. "I thought this was a family dinner," I said. His mom chimed in quickly. "But we wanted to talk to you about something exciting." Dad nodded, stepping forward like a project manager about to present quarterly projections. "Your sister has been working on a business venture for the past few months, and we think there's a real opportunity here for the family." I looked at Sierra. She pushed the folder a few inches closer to me. "It's called Serafina and Exclusive Wellness Boutique Facials Infrared Therapy Custom Skinere Lines. It's luxury meets holistic. Think Goop, but better. Catchy," I said flatly. "Let me guess. You're the face of it." "I am the brand," she said like it was obvious. "I already have over 80K followers, and one of my reels went semi-viral last month." I raised an eyebrow. "We've secured a location in Capitol Hill." Dad jumped in, his voice now firm and confident, and Sierra's drafted a rollout plan for Q4. He said Q4 like this was in a family living room. Mom slid her wine glass closer to the center. "We just need a little financial backing to get through launch." There it was, the real reason. "How much?" I asked, even though I already knew it wouldn't be a little. Sierra lit up, her hands unfolding with practiced grace. "Just $200,000. That would cover the lease, initial product inventory, social media campaigns, and influencer partnerships." I blinked, slowly. "You want me to give you 200 grand, not give?" Dad corrected. "Invest. With interest and equity." I almost laughed. "You want me to invest in a business that doesn't even exist yet, run by someone who overdrafted her account last month and tried to steal?" From mine the week after? Mom stiffened. "That was a misunderstanding." "No," I snapped. "That was fraud." Sierra crossed her arms. "Wow, you really love throwing that in my face." "No, Sierra," I said calmly. "I'm just not pretending it didn't happen." I opened the folder. Inside was a pitch deck, Poorly formatted vague projections, a list of potential partnerships with brands I knew wouldn't touch this venture with a 10F'd poll. I flipped through page after page of pastel fluff and buzzwords. You listed me as a potential investor in here, I said, holding up the second to last page. You didn't even talk to me before putting my name down. Mom's voice tightened. We knew you'd come around once you saw the vision. I'm not your bank, I said. You're part of this family, Dad snapped. I turned to him when it's convenient. Sierra's eyes narrowed. So, you're really going to say no? I'm not just saying no, I said, dropping the folder back on the table. I'm saying this is a terrible idea. You don't have a real plan. You don't have financial backing. You don't have a team, a tested product, or even a clue how to run a business. You just have an aesthetic. Dad's face turned red. Watch your tone. No, I said, standing my ground. Watch how you treat people. You skipped my graduation, tried to steal from me, and now expect me to fund your daughter's vanity project. I came here to give you a chance, not to be insulted. Sierra shoved her chair back. You've always been jealous of me. I laughed. Jealous of what? The constant bailouts. The fact that your only plan is to sell face masks and moon water to people who can't pronounce serotonin. Mom stood up. Enough, Ava. You're being cruel. No, I said, picking up my bag. I'm being honest. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick envelope. What's that? Dad asked wearily. Receipts, I said, dropping it next to the wine glass. Credit rejections, loan denials, emails from banks who already said no to this spa idea. You've already pitched this to 3 different people, and when they all passed, you turned to me. Mom stared at the envelope like it was a grenade. You knew it wouldn't pass real scrutiny, I continued. So, you came to the one person you assumed wouldn't say no. Sierra's mouth opened and closed. She had no rebuttal. I leaned forward slightly, voice cold now. I'm not your fallback. I'm not your plan. See, I'm not the girl you ignore until you need something. And then I turned to leave. No one stopped me. No one said a word. The last thing I heard before the door closed behind me was the sound of my father exhaling like a man watching a deal fall apart. I walked out into the night with my chest tight and my hands trembling, but I didn't cry. I didn't feel small. I didn't feel broken. I felt clean, free. I texted Claire. It was exactly what we thought. They wanted money. I walked out. She replied instantly. Proud of you. Drinks on me. Tomorrow. I smiled. Back in my apartment, I made tea and pulled out my laptop. The screen lit up with a notification from my startup dashboard. Our beta test had officially launched. Early engagement was higher than projected. I stared at the graph, the upward trend, the green bars. Proof that I was building something real without their help, without their permission. I glanced at my diploma, still unframed, still quiet. It wasn't proof of my value. I was, and that would be enough. They saw me as a wallet. Tonight, I reminded them I have a spine. The next morning, I expected silence. No texts, no voicemails, just the usual vacuum that followed when I pushed back against my family. But I should have known. Sierra wouldn't take a clean note as the final word. At 9:03 a.m., she posted a reel. I wasn't following her anymore. But Claire sent it to me. You need to see this. Her message read. The video opened with soft piano music and Sierra speaking directly to the camera, eyes dewy, voice trembling just enough to pass for sincerity. I've always believed in women supporting women, she began. But this week I learned the hard way that not every woman in your life wants to see you win, even when that woman is your own sister. My stomach flipped. She went on, I had this beautiful dream to build a wellness sanctuary, a space for healing and empowerment, but when I asked someone I trusted for support, she said, my dream wasn't real, that I was just an aesthetic, that I wasn't worth the investment. Cut to clips of her smiling with candles, skinary jars, latte art, filtered and curated to perfection. I'm still building, she said, voice catching, because no one, not even blood, can dim your light if you don't let them. The comments poured in. You don't need her, queen. Jealousy is a disease. Keep shining. You're the strong sister. Always were. I stared at the screen. Pulse racing. She had twisted everything. Made me the villain. In a story where she was the wounded visionary. Claire FaceTimed me within minutes. Her eyebrows were already halfway up her forehead. Do I need to call a lawyer? She asked. I don't think slander covers passive-aggressive. Instagram reels, I muttered. Claire rolled her eyes. People are already resharing it. You're getting DMs. One of my coworkers even sent it to me like, isn't this that influencer from Bellevue? I ran a hand through my hair. She's turning this into a campaign. Claire looked at me carefully. What are you going to do? I didn't answer right away. I wanted to ignore it, take the high road, let her flame out on her own like she always did. But this wasn't just a family feud anymore. She had dragged my name into the court of public opinion, twisting reality into content. She was trying to ruin me to protect a lie, and people were believing. I pulled open my laptop, logged into my LinkedIn, and stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed, some dreams are built on grit, others on guilt trips. When your own family tries to manipulate you into funding a fantasy, and then slanders you for saying no, it hurts. But it also shows you exactly who they are. Protect your peace and your passwords. It wasn't direct. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. Within hours it had over 600 reactions. People messaged me privately sharing their own family stories, their own betrayals, their own hard boundaries. I hadn't expected that. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted space. But instead I got solidarity. By that evening, the family group chat, which I had muted months ago, lit up like a wildfire. Dad, that post was uncalled for. Mom, we don't air our dirty laundry online. Ava, Sierra. Wow. Why I didn't respond. Not out of weakness, because I was finally done explaining myself to people who'd never listened anyway. Claire came over with takeout. That night, Thai food and spring rolls. We sat cross-legged on my floor again. Mila the cat asleep in her lap. You handled that better than I would have, she said. mouth full of pads. See you. I shrugged. I don't want to be her. Performing pain for attention. But you are allowed to have your voice. I nodded slowly. That's what I'm figuring out. We clinked our chopsticks together like wine glasses. A weird little victory toast. That night I fell asleep without replaying the argument. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel righteous. I felt lighter. The next few days passed, quietly. The Instagram drama died down, replaced by whatever trending scandal came next. Sierra moved on to posting skincare routines and matcha reviews. My name faded from her captions. I thought it was over until I got the call. Karen waved me into her office just before lunch on Thursday. She didn't look angry, but she didn't look casual either. I just had a conversation with one of our angel investors. She said, "He's been a close contact for years. Knows your family." My stomach sank. They're hearing chatter. She continued, "Apparently, someone's suggesting you're emotionally unstable, that you have a history of sabotage, that you're unreliable." My face went cold. Sierra Karen held up a hand. "I know who it came from, and I don't believe a word of it." I let out a shaky breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "But it does mean one thing," she said. "They're scared. People only smear your name when they're threatened by your truth." I nodded. "So, what do I do?" Karen's eyes were sharp. "You keep building. You rise above it. You document everything. And if it escalates, you burn every bridge they use to get to you." She stood and patted my shoulder. "You've got something they don't. Substance. Let that speak louder than their noise." That night, I changed the privacy settings on every account. I scrubbed personal details from my bios. I built walls where doors used to be, not out of fear, out of self-respect. Because the truth was, I wasn't the same girl who cried over empty chairs and unspoken apologies. I was something they didn't expect, resilient. And I was just getting started. If they wanted a war, they should have prepared for someone who no longer needed their approval. 3 months later, I stood in the lobby of a glass-walled conference center, watching strangers file in with name badges and bright-eyed ambition. My name tag read Ava Morgan, panelist. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been invited to speak at a Women in FinTech forum, an actual stage, a real audience, and a microphone, with my name attached. And this time, there were no empty seats. Claire was already in the third row beaming. Karen was backstage mouthing, "You've got this." And even my boss's boss, the one who once thought I was too quiet, was now leaning forward with a pen ready. And yet this wasn't the moment I'd always dreamed of. It wasn't a fantasy, payoff, or some long overdue revenge. It was something better, closure without bitterness. Because I didn't need applause anymore, just the peace of knowing I'd survived and grown without it. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't go for the flashy lines or the corporate safe buzzwords. I told them the truth about what it means to be the invisible one, about boundaries that feel like betrayal to those who've always benefited from your silence, about how healing isn't a straight line, and how choosing yourself can look a lot like selfishness to the people who only Loved you when you were useful, and when I told them about the day 5 chairs stayed empty at my graduation, no one laughed. They nodded. They understood. After the forum, I walked out into the sunshine with Claire. Seattle's late. Summer air was warm, not too humid, and the city pulsed with its usual blend of urgency and possibility. You crushed it, she said, looping her arm through mine. Thanks, I said, smiling without effort for once. We stopped at a street vendor and got iced lattes in plastic cups that dripped condensation onto our hands. You know what? I've realized, I said, sipping mine. For the longest time, I thought love had to look like sacrifice. That if I just gave enough, time, energy, money, they'd finally see me. Claire nodded slowly. But love without respect isn't love. It's obligation. And I'm done mistaking one for the other. She raised her coffee like a toast to chosen family. I clinked mine against hers to chosen self. I hadn't spoken to Sierra or my parents since the attempted investor smear. They'd gone quiet, at least for now. I assumed they'd retreated to whatever group chat they used to blame me for their problems. And I was okay with that. They weren't monsters. Just selfish, entitled, addicted to the version of me that stayed quiet and compliant. That version no longer existed. I didn't hate them, I just didn't chase them anymore. And that freedom, more than forgiveness, more than some tidy reconciliation, was the healing I didn't know I needed. The real healing, though, came later that fall. One afternoon I got an email from a girl I'd never met. Her name was Jasmine, and her subject line read, "I saw your post." In the body of the message she wrote, "I'm in a similar place with my family. I've always been the fixer, the responsible one, and I'm drowning in expectations I never agreed to. I read your post from back in June, and I just wanted to say thank you. You helped me feel less alone. I set a boundary for the first time last week. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine." I sat at my desk rereading that line over and over. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. That was the story I never got. Growing up, that imperfect love could still be enough. That being alone didn't mean being broken. That saying no could be the loudest, bravest yes of all. Sometimes when I walk past the graduation photos on store shelves in September, I still feel that old pang, that twinge of longing for something simple, a proud smile from a parent, a shoulder squeeze from someone who believed in me before I did. But then I remember what those 5 empty seats taught me. They weren't just a symbol of what I lacked. They were proof of what I no longer needed. I didn't need to be clapped for. I didn't need a stage celebration. I needed to belong to myself. On the anniversary of my graduation, Claire and I hosted a little dinner on the rooftop of my building. Just 6 people, friends from work, her girlfriend, our neighbor downstairs, who brings us cinnamon rolls when he bakes. Too many. We lit candles in old wine bottles, brought mismatched chairs up from the lobby, and passed around plates of lemon pasta and stories we'd never told before. When dessert came, Claire raised a glass. "To Ava," she said, grinning, who finally framed her diploma. Everyone laughed. But it wasn't about the paper. It was about the person I'd become without their permission. I looked around at the table at people who saw me not as a safety net or a shadow, but as someone worth showing up for. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt full. Not in spite of the empty seats from before, but because I'd stopped waiting for them to be filled. Some stories aren't about winning them back. Some stories are about walking away and realizing you were whole all along.